Let's talk about Lent today and do a deep dive because it directly connects with all we have discussed so far and very much informs work required of us by Jesus. Previously I spoke about how the Christian teaching is very clear about what we must do, but it does not tell us how to do it. We are told to love our enemies, for instance. We are told to remove the plank from our own eye, to keep the 10 Commandments, and other things that we cannot do as we are. We cannot do as we are instructed because we are not whole. We are full of inner demons that take turns at seizing control of us. We like to think of ourselves as one and the same person, but really we are more like a bus full of different people, like the biblical character aptly named Legion. And all of those passengers want to drive. We leave church and the pious passenger grabs his steering wheel and drives away. A few minutes later, a beautiful woman crosses the road and a lustful, fornicating passenger grabs a wheel and continues driving. We see a child cry on the side of the road, and a loving father grabs the wheel and drives our bus for a while, and so it goes on all our lives. We are not a unified whole. We have within us a busload of characters that seize control of us without warning and without us noticing. Some of these characters are interested in working towards becoming better Christians. Others have no interest whatsoever. They are only interested in sex or new cars, big houses, filling their bellies, judging others, being admired. So an important goal for us in walking towards God is to get to know all the passengers on the bus, what they want, where they want to take us, to notice when they jump in the driver's seat and replace them immediately with a passenger who will take us where we want to go. We are unaccustomed to thinking about ourselves in this way, but long observation proves that this is simply a matter of fact that we can realize for ourselves. In fact, we find exactly the same ideas in the teachings of Gurdjieff and modern psychology, where whole therapies have been developed around this understanding. Schema therapy, for instance. But returning to Lent now, this is one of those rare examples where the Christian teaching gives us a living example of the process involved in order to do what Jesus asks of us. We should be clear by now that what we are aiming for is inner transformation through turning inward, through prayer and meditation, confronting our shadow, that is, our sin, cultivating awareness, deep understanding, and connecting with the divine light within. This is the real meaning of Lent. Lent begins on Ash Wednesday and lasts 40 days, not counting Sundays. It is inspired by Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness, but connects to other biblical symbolism surrounding 4 and 40, such as Israel's 40 years in the desert, Elijah's 40-day journey, the 40 days Moses spent on Mount Sinai fasting, but we will talk about this later. Traditionally, the meaning and purpose has been diluted in the Orthodox Church and shifted more to confession of sin, refraining from eating meat and fasting in general, giving something up, simplicity and almsgiving. Let's consider a few things. Where did Jesus go for these 40 days? Scripture is not specific, but we can be fairly sure it was in the Judean desert. Moses, on the other hand, did something very similar. He fasted for 40 days in the Sinai desert. Shortly after the death of Jesus, many true, aspiring early Christians went to the Cetes desert and stayed there for a very long time. But why the wilderness of the desert? I live in a country that is mostly desert and very sparsely populated. During my first trip deep into the desert, after several days' travel, I turned off the car sat down on a dirt track hundreds of miles away from the nearest person and made a cup of coffee. As I sat, I became profoundly aware of the utter stillness and silence. It is impossible to relay the experience. The best I could do to convey the experience at that time was that I felt the weight of silence like it was a physical sense, as real and palpable as sight, touch, or any other sense. If you want to connect to the inner dwelling God, this is the absolute ultimate place. Here is the place to confront our demons. Here is the place to pray with real intensity. Here is the place where the deepest inward meditation is possible. It is usual for Christians to balk at the idea of meditation for fear of pagan ideas being smuggled into their faith. But this is quite absurd. The aim of meditation in the East is identical to that in the West, to turn inwards in quiet solitude, to try to connect directly with the divine. It is noteworthy that while meditation is mentioned often in Buddhism, the literature it is mentioned most often is, apart from Buddhism, is the Orthodox Bible, some 60 or 70 times. It is not a different thing at all. But today when we ask a churchgoer what they are doing for Lent, they say things like, "I'm not eating meat, I'm giving up chocolates, refusing alcohol," and things like that, rather than, "I'm confronting my sin, trying to connect with a God that dwells within more deeply, contemplating and resisting my inner demons, anger, lust, lying, gluttony, avarice, judging." We can choose anyone we like. And this is the real meaning and purpose of Lent. Aspiring Christians often think about what they must do to be better Christians. But Lent approaches this question from a very different point of view. What is it that we must not do in order to work our way towards God? Not doing is a very powerful form of doing. Finally, we must ask, how does fasting fit into all of this? Why is fasting mentioned so often in the religious literature of the East and West? How is it helpful? Well, food triggers several things in the body. Insulin levels spike and drop. Blood flow increases to the digestive system. And the parasympathetic rest and digest mode activates, causing sleepiness. Fasting, on the other hand, produces ketones which sharpen mental clarity. So the desert context, along with fasting, are the best possible conditions to connect with the divine. Thanks for listening.